We come together to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, to reclaim the vision of an earth more fair with all her people one. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst. I'm Reverend Michelle Buchheit, the minister of this congregation. My pronouns, which I offer to create a truly inclusive and brave space for all to live into the fullness of their identities, are she and her. I'm joined in celebration today with our Director of Faith Development, Angela Warren, who is right here, and I'm so happy to have her back after her mini sabbatical, and also our musician, Adam Schmidt. We are so glad that you have chosen to be here virtually or in person. For those in the chapel, I invite you to put your phones on, shall we call it celebration mode, silencing them so that you are not disrupted by other things when you can be fully present to what's going on in this space with these beloveds.
And good morning. I'm Angela Warren, and I'm glad to be back with you today after having a month off. As we gather, we acknowledge that our church is built on occupied land that once belonged to the First Nations people of this region, the Haudenosaunee, and the people known as the Neutrals before them. May we be good stewards of the land and courageously cultivate community with all living things. It's been said that Unitarian Universalism is the religion that puts its faith in you, trusting each individual to engage in the spiritual journey and to reach our own conclusions about spiritual matters. We do that in beloved community as we support one another in faith and in friendship. And in that spirit, this congregation has created a covenant, a sacred promise of how we will strive to be with one another. Please join me in speaking our covenant. Together we promise to gather in compassionate community, to celebrate diversity of thought and unity of spirit, and to seek wholeness for ourselves, our children, and our world. We begin our weekly celebration by lighting the chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Our chalice lighting words this morning come from the contemporary mystic poet Chilan Harkin. We are here to bring forth our light and hold the candles of ourselves to each other.
Each of us carries with us into this worship time cares and concerns, joys and sorrows. Together, we create the container where we can put down our burdens, knowing they are held gently by this beloved community. For those joining virtually, I invite you to perhaps give voice to what is on your mind or type it into the chat in the live stream. For those here in our chapel, I invite you to come forward and place a stone or shell on the table labyrinth in recognition of that which is in your heart. And I will just draw your attention that the table labyrinth is on the opposite side of where it was last week. So don't go over to the flowers. So please join me as you would wish to bring your joys, concerns, and sorrows to this space. Please join me in a communal response. In this gathered community, we hold one another in love. Together, we light a candle of sorrow and concern for the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia, and indeed all of the people and the more than human family of life on earth. We include in the circle of compassion and care all those who are impacted by acts of aggression and terror. We pray for peace and compassion in our war-torn world. In this gathered community, we hold the world in love. Our time for all ages today is a story video, and the story is entitled Love.
Love, a picture book written by Matt de la Peña and illustrated by Lauren Long. In the beginning, there is light, and two wide-eyed figures standing near the foot of your bed, and the sound of their voices is love. A cab driver plays love softly on his radio while you bouncing back with the bumps of the city, and everything smells new, and it smells like life. Love, too, is the smell of crashing waves, and the train whistling blindly in the distance, and each night the sky above your trailer turns the color of love. In a crowded concrete park, you toddle toward summer sprinklers, while older kids skip rope and run up the slide, and soon you are running among them, and the echo of your laughter is love. On the night the fire alarm blares, you're pulled from sleep and whisked into the street, where a quiet old lady is pointing to the sky. Stars shine long after they've flamed out, she tells you. And the shine they shine with is love. You wake with a start in the arms of a loved one who bends to your ear and whispers, "It's okay, it's okay, it's love." And in time you learn to recognize a love overlooked. A love that wakes at dawn and rides to work on the bus. A slice of burnt toast that tastes like love. And it's love in each deep crease of your grandfather's face as he lowers himself onto an overturned bucket to fish. And it's love in the rustling leaves of gnarled trees lined behind the flower fields. And it's love in the made-up stories your uncles tell in the backyard between wild horseshoe throws. And the man in rags outside the subway station plays love notes that lift into the sky like tiny beacons of light. And the face staring back in the bathroom mirror, this too is love. So when the time comes for you to set off on your own, heavy winds will sweep past your building, and great gray clouds will congregate above. Your loved ones will stand there like puddles beneath their umbrellas, holding you tight and kissing you and wishing you luck. But it won't be luck you'll leave with, because you'll have love. You'll have love, love, love.
It was the third Sunday in August, 2015, my third week with you here. And after the service, I was approached separately by 3 patriarchs of the congregation who informed me that I talked about God and love too much. I know it's hard to imagine that. After only an accumulated 3 hours, they had discovered my greatest character flaws. Or were they my greatest gifts to offer? I'm always interested when people have strong reactions to the language I use. What were these seeds that I was planting as I encouraged folks to love and to explore the mystery of ultimacy? What well of pain was being stirred? And was I up to the task of being the minister that this congregation needed? Well, fast forward to the present. Having survived the loss of dear ones, 2 years of pandemic separation, and the ongoing uncertainty of life in general and church in particular, and I would say that we have watered those seeds of love and ultimacy with our tears and warmed them with our stubborn hopefulness. We have experienced firsthand the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Today we gather to acknowledge the turning of the wheel from the cold and death of winter to the stirring and awakening of spring. We recognize the vernal equinox, known to pagans as Ostara, dedicated to the goddess known as Ostara. We celebrate the many ways that love manifests in and around us throughout the seasons of the year and the seasons of our lives. We rejoice in the rising energy of new life within us and around us.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak. Her sap doth run in my veins. Boundless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain. the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
We honor the passage of time, the wheel that cycles from season to season, inviting us to rest in the moment and offer prayers of gratitude for the seeds that have taken root in our own lives, cracking us open as we surrender to the process we cannot see, that process that transforms us as we cannot transform ourselves.
We give thanks for the promise of spring, the end of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. We give thanks for the seeds that sprang into life and those that remained withered and wrinkled symbols of unmet expectations. The seeds teach us about beauty and lost potential.
We are grateful for the sweet cacophony of returning birds, the robins puffed up with their importance as harbingers of the new season, and the bully grackles at the feeder, forcing the smaller birds to be stealthy and creative to claim their share.
We give praise to the bicycles and the dog walkers, the kids on skates navigating heaved sidewalks. We sing of warm evenings on the porch yet to come, fully faithful to the unfolding miracle of all that spring ushers in. We are renewed and revived.
I invite you to join me in a response. The words are up front. We come together to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, to reclaim the vision of an earth more fair with all her people one. We come together to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life. I find that a challenging affirmation as the world tilts toward war, as people are displaced, disrupted, and wantonly killed over territory. And my tears are not only for the people of Ukraine. We can witness this grasping across the globe. And that is why we come together to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, because that affirmation requires faith, faith in the face of all that unfolds around us. Even in the midst of pain, Our faith is restored and renewed in thousands of small acts of kindness and courage, and in the silent, majestic witness of towering mountains, flowering fields, and the unfathomable oceans. We come together to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart. At a time when so many are creating boundaries to keep others out, we celebrate the openness and compassion that our faith demands. When we are flooded with images and words that reinforce an us and them worldview, we gather to open our doors, our minds, and our hearts wide, refusing to make ourselves small and afraid. We gather to rekindle the flame of memory and hope. We know that we are carried on the shoulders of those good ancestors who came before us. We keep that flame burning even as we adapt and change to be the good ancestors that the future demands. We reclaim the vision of an earth more fair with all her people one. This world we have been gifted with all of its trouble and turmoil is unsurpassingly fair, dripping with loveliness and bursting with blessings. All of life sparkles with stardust and divinity. We encourage one another and the world to live in deep relationship with the interdependent web of all life. We exult in the majesty, beauty, and reciprocity of this blue-green island that we call home.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yeah.
This is a reading from Mark Nepo's The Book of Awakening from April 5th. The Courage of a Seed. All the buried seeds crack open in the dark the instant they surrender to a process they can't see. What a powerful lesson is the beginning of spring. All around us, everything small and buried surrenders to a process that none of the buried parts can see. And this innate surrender allows everything edible and fragrant to break ground into a new life of light that we call spring. In nature, we are quietly given countless models of how to give ourselves over to what appears dark and hopeless, but which ultimately is an awakening that is beyond all imagining. This moving through the dark into blossom is the threshold of God. As a seed buried in the earth cannot imagine itself as an orchid or hyacinth, neither can a heart packed with hurt imagine itself loved or at peace. The courage of the seed is that once cracking, it cracks all the way. End quote. Did you know that there are books and journals about the theory of seed germination? There are close to 400,000 species of vascular plants in the world, most of them flowering, and therefore, in theory, capable of reproducing by seed. The selected species are studied individually by biologists and chemists, and the entries penned by those scientists and their students at land-grant universities throughout this country and the rest of the world. This is their specialty, and yet the mystery of how seeds work is still a theory. The extinction of some species and the discovery of others perpetually gives the scientists more and more varieties of plants to theorize about. The light of change is always surrounding us, and now as the time of the growing spring light begins, seeds will begin to germinate out of the darkness from under the earth's blanket of soil. Some are tiny little grains smaller than sand and difficult to grasp. In contrast, some of them have a life cycle that's only a few weeks long. Some of our weedier friends, but also beneficial nitrogen-producing cover crops in agriculture. Those seeds in the darkness under the soil aren't the only signs of renewal that we might notice. The cacophony of so many bud-filled branches of woody shrubs and trees begin to spend some of their reserved energy putting forth irresistible flowers for the pollinators. These insect friends can't help but aid in the formation of new seeds. These woody plants don't use all of their energy for flowering, though. They know to save some to unfurl their leaves and elongate their branches through the spring, summer, and fall until it's time for them to rest again. Tiny seeds like the winged ones we planted at solstice of the mighty catalpa you see pictured in full flower on the slide. That tree lives right outside here, and that's where the seeds came from. And there's little babies there that some of us planted back in December. They end up as massive structures in their maturity if all goes according to their interior plan, to what they already know inside without seeing. They will take a long time to grow up, and as they age, they learn to be careful with themselves. Plants with longevity like the catalpa and other native shade trees have to go through a lot during their lifetime. This particular photo, as I said, the tree is about 15 feet tall with a 5-inch caliper trunk, but they're still juvenile. They're still little teenagers. Plants like these take at least 100 years to even be called mature. So they live longer than we do. So then what is this knowingness that our plant friends have inherently within? How do they know when to begin and how much energy to preserve? How do they know to get so big or only last a short amount of time? The knowing may not be seen. It may get buried, but it is still there. If only we could foster our inherent earthliness enough to know as the plants know, I think we'd all be less hurried and exhausted. Recently, Reverend Michelle's colleague Mark Chafin invited us into a Lenten study of the recently published The Church of the Wild by climate activist and spiritual director Victoria Lors, who says, "Church burnout is not uncommon. In fact, I think leaving church is a natural phase of spiritual growth. There comes a point when you need to withdraw from what has become too familiar in order to see again. And this about sacred activism. Quote, working for change that rarely can be seen in a lifetime, when we only have one lifetime, is inherently difficult. There comes a point when you need to withdraw in order to know who you are again." This makes me recall the so many times that I've wanted to be more involved in a cause, but I'm just too exhausted to make the effort completely. Maybe I haven't fully committed because I'm reluctant to let go of myself and allow germination of the imagination of others to join my own creative forces. Have you ever procrastinated so long because you're afraid of what will happen when you pull the trigger on an idea? That as much as you long for your own imagination to be realized, not knowing what it will look like when it's manipulated by the others you have involved with the idea can be paralyzing. This is kind of like not knowing what the weather will be like, really. Be prepared for rain, gale force winds, snow, hail, floods, light rain, sunshine, fog, warmth, coolness. How do we learn from the natural cycles of our Earth Mother when to grow and when to rest? What if we think of the resting as part of the growth? If we wholeheartedly believe that we are part of the cycle of life that we observe in other earthly beings like the plants, we will know better that this earth is ultimately, unsurpassingly fair. One of the responses to the Discovery Trimester of Church in 3D that this congregation will be working on through the year came from our beloved Marie Evans. She said, "My husband aptly described the difference from a Catholic parish when he said, 'When I come to your church, people don't ask, where have you been? They say, we're happy to see you again.'" This was also my experience in the beginning of my time at this church. Once I was welcomed this way, I knew that I belonged and could more clearly find meaning and purpose. And this is why we are the Church of the Open Mind. You can join me in the motions if you wish. This is a children's chalice lighting. We are the Church of the Open Mind. This is the Church of the Helping Hands. This is the Church of the Loving Heart. Together we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in our world. How does anyone, us, trees, hyacinth, or orchid, anyone at all, know what is inside unless it cracks all the way? Sometimes alone in the dark, sometimes with a series of serendipitous events that involve other beings in the intricate web of life. All is all, as above, so below. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
This week, my colleague, Reverend Ashley Horan, posted this photo that she took. At first glance, it looks a bit like an unusual chalice with seeds sprouting within it. That unusual chalice is actually an apple core. Having enjoyed the apple all the way to the core, she discovered new life bursting through. She reflected on that with these words. While eating a delicious evening Honeycrisp apple, I discovered that the little seeds inside were already sprouting. For some reason, this strikes me as infinitely beautiful, a reminder that our food is alive, that things are germinating deep within, even when they are not visible, that the world is bursting with the impulse toward growth and life and creation, and it is ours to see if only we open our eyes to the everyday miracles that abound all around us. Grateful for this moment of beauty and alarming, vivid awareness. What a wonderful thought and image to continue our conversation about the courage of the seed. And it's just a little side note. Ashley ate and discovered the goodies inside this apple on the same day when she discovered she was pregnant with new life. I love that. All the buried seeds crack open in the dark the instant they surrender to a process they can't see. As a seed buried in the earth cannot imagine itself as an orchid or hyacinth, neither can a heart packed with hurt imagine itself loved or at peace. The courage of the seed is that once cracking, it cracks all the way. I wonder what seeds you've planted that are languishing in the dark. Maybe it's been so long since you planted those seeds that you'd be hard-pressed to name them or possibly even to remember them. Can you recall that optimistic day when you sowed the seeds of creativity, generosity, love? Were there seeds of self-care planted with the promise that this time, yes, finally this time, you would give yourself the nurture and care to keep hope alive? Or did you, like Jack's mother in the story of the beanstalk, weary and disillusioned, throw the hard, nondescript, tiny seeds out the window, unable to imagine the fragile life held within that brittle shell? How often do we throw away the seeds of possibility because of a lack of imagination? As a seed buried in the earth cannot imagine itself as an orchid or hyacinth, neither can a heart packed with hurt imagine itself loved or at peace. Like the seed trapped in darkness with no idea what life of possibility is stirring within, we sojourn alone through the spiritual winter with no comfort that this movement through the cold and darkness is actually the very threshold to God, to the source of life and love that sustains us. It is only when we are finally willing to surrender to the process we can neither see nor fully understand that the first tiny cracks appear in our hard shells. But of course, that's only the beginning, right? Tiny cracks in the shell are simply the openings that allow the warmth to spread into the seed. The courage of the seed is that once cracking, it cracks all the way. That is the act of full surrender to the process we can't see. I'll call that an act of faith. When the seed submits and surrenders to that process, that momentary death, then it opens itself to realizing its full potential. The orchid or hyacinth that slumbers within the seed can only move from imagination to full form through the death of the seed. Sometimes we must surrender to a death of a dream, of a relationship, of a way of living and being, in order to be reborn into a new way of being. And it is imperative that we take that journey, the journey of the seed, the journey into surrender and rebirth. It's a spiritual journey, and it is one that we undertake every day of our lives. As a seed buried in the earth cannot imagine itself as an orchid or hyacinth, neither can a heart packed with hurt imagine itself loved or at peace. Not one of us is spared that painful experience. And nature teaches us that this is the path of surrender and transformation. The seed will open only when enough pressure and moisture has been applied. On our soul's journey, it is often our tears that water the seed and prepare the soil for the new life to come. Seldom do we shake off doubt and despair like an ill-fitting coat, having outgrown it or tired of its fashion. The shedding and releasing can be excruciating, but I have found there is hope in the life of the seed. Hearts, just like seeds, in the cold, dark earth have to crack open, surrendering to death in order to be reborn. That's the way it is for all of us. We need to submit and surrender before we can be reborn to new possibilities and the soft warmth of the promise of spring. When we surrender outdated notions of ourselves, we give ourselves the space to grow. This innate surrender allows the beauty of our potential to break ground into a life of light. Nepo calls this journey from the darkness of the buried seed to the breakthrough into a life of light, the threshold to God. You might experience that breakthrough as connection, joy, renewed hope, or my favorite, love. We finally encounter our authentic selves through the lens of a love that will not let us go. Process theologian Henry Nelson Wyman is noted for saying, "The ultimate commitment, our ultimate commitment, is to that which has the power to transform us as we cannot transform ourselves when the necessary conditions have been met." This is the surrender to a process we cannot see. We cannot transform ourselves. We must rely on that power that is our catalyst for change. Wyman talks about necessary conditions being met. And when we're talking about the courage of the seed, the necessary conditions include two major and complementary forces, soil and sun. Until the sun has warmed the soil enough, the seed lies dormant, unable to crack open. Once the warmth of the sun, let's call it love, has reached into our winter-hardened hearts, we do nothing more than surrender to that process we cannot see, but that we trust will call us to life. The courage of the seed is that once cracking, it cracks all the way.
Now the green blade rises from the buried grain. Wheat that in dark earth many days has lain. Love lives again, that with the dead has been. Love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. In the grave they laid him, love by hatred slain, thinking that never he would wake again. Laid in the earth like grain that sleeps unseen. Love is come again,
Thank you for joining us in worship today. I hope you have been inspired and uplifted by sharing this time together. Just a reminder that you can support the work and mission of this congregation with your financial contributions. For those in the chapel today, you'll find baskets at the back of the chapel to receive your gift. And for those participating virtually, I invite you to take a moment to visit our website, uuamherst.org, and click on the giving link. Or any of y'all can text a gift to 833-987-1968. Please join me as we extinguish our chalice with these familiar words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And I'm going to have Adam play through Travel Light and Travel Easy, and we will sing it together, verse 1, verse 2, and then verse 1 again. And the words will be up here. Travel light and travel easy till I see you once again. Travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend. May the road rise up to greet you as you leave your past behind. I will think about you gently, and I'll hold you in my mind. Travel light and travel easy till I see you once again. Travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend. We do not have much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel this way with us, so be swift to love and make haste to be kind. Go in peace.